Dave has two master's degrees in instructional technologies and organizational psychology. He's trained countless learners face to face, many others through his online courses. He's created more than 25 courses for Simon Says It across a variety of different applications and software packages and has many more on the way. And Dave, I'll pass it over to you now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ben, and thank you, everyone. I know we're taking a little departure from what we've done in the past, and we're talking about Microsoft Word. But the concept of what we're going to be discussing, working with styles, is kind of a universal topic, but also more importantly, it's something that a lot of people should be using that they're not using. Is something called styles. And we're going to talk about styles. We're going to talk about advanced formatting. We're going to talk about kind of how we use it, why we use it, and kind of processes around all that. Let's get a little bit kind of a background about what we are when we're talking about styles. So what are styles in Word? It's more than just the word you may understand in the language of styles. So basically, styles are predefined formatting for a combination of different texts, also for paragraphs, but it could also be used for bullets, headings, and so much more. But essentially, the predefining part of it allows you to have more efficiency, right? Because it's already done for you from Word, but also possibly from you custom wise, right? Where you're actually making your own personalized style. So again, it's a predefined format. So you don't have to actually spend time creating something, looking for it, or whatever. Okay, but it's also going to allow us to have efficiency and consistency. So you're going to hear me use that term quite a bit. So where do we use it? For headings, for individual words, for paragraphs, could be for lists, meaning unordered list, or even ordered list, right? Numbers and bullets. What can it be included? Anything that you work with in terms of any formatting, right? Font, right? You want to change it from Arial to Calibri, whatever it is. The size of the font, the color, the spacing, alignment. But again, it's going to allow you to do a saved version of it so you can apply it very quickly. Where can we find styles? It's going to be under the Home tab. I'm going to give you a nice little tour of all that in just a minute. Now, what can be the kind of expanded uses for styles? Again, it's about efficiency. Quickly format our text, quickly format our paragraphs, and whatever formatting means to you, we'll be able to do that. You know, a lot of law firms that have these very, very long documents, maybe you're doing a dissertation, right? Anything like that, that could just be like, hey, we're going to have the need for consistency. We're going to want to be able to do it quickly. But the implication is that not only are we going to want to apply it, but we may want to modify the style. So let's just say, for example, the company you're working for suddenly decides that they're not going to use a certain font anymore, right? We're not going to use a certain color anymore, whatever it is, and you've got 50 pages worth of content, you can quickly change that format. You don't have to actually do it manually. And that's what styles are all about. Okay. And we're going to have consistency. Why is consistency so important? It speaks of professionalism, right? That's why when you see something that is consistent, we see that this is done in a clean, organized way. So therefore, it looks like it's professionally done. There's intention, there's purpose around the whole narrative. One other thing we can do is we can create a table of contents using styles. So styles, it does not stop at formatting. Styles allows us to actually go a little bit deeper with table of contents. And you're going to see that creates this kind of hierarchy that's built into it. So we're going to see even more so, not just working with our formatting, but also how we can navigate through a document. Kind of an unexpected bonus when you are working with styles. So we'll get into that. We'll give you lots of demonstrations around that. Okay, applying and customizing styles, very big part of it. We don't have to just stop with what Word gives us. We can create our own custom. So if you're working for a particular company and they have their own sort of style guide, right? Their own sort of style sheet they're working from, we can create our own. So you can see here, here's our step-by-step. You select text and then boom, you go right from the style gallery. You can modify the built-in styles that are part of the custom style. And then you can even go deeper into something called the styles pane for even more control. And I'll show you where those are, and we'll do our best with timing. And certainly, I'm sure you'll have some questions. And then we're going to start off actually kind of initially looking at some of the themes that are built in, because some of you just want to just save some time and then look at what the kind of like style sets that are built into Word overall. And again, I'm going to show you all this stuff real quick. All right. And this is going to kind of sum up. It saves time. And remember, it's about efficiency. Okay. Improves readability and hierarchy, right? We understand if something is a heading, something else is a heading too. We understand because of the way that we've created our formatting and our styles because one's bigger than the other. Maybe one's bold, maybe it's a different color, that kind of thing. But we know we're going to have like chapters and subchapters, right? And that is our visual hierarchy to inherently allow the audience to know when something is less important. It's a new section, that type of thing. And we also have the global formatting changes, right? When we actually make it one change in one place, it changes everywhere. So think about the styles as almost kind of like a mold. You change the mold in one place, everything else kind of cascades connected to that original mold. And also, another bonus that some of you need to consider is about accessibility for people who are using screen readers. So, by law, at least in the United States and maybe in some other countries, it is essential for accessibility. So, people who are using screen readers who have visual impairment, that you are working with styles. So, there's an understanding that there is that hierarchy built in. So, the screen readers understand it as well. Now, we have two different files we're going to be working with. One is the formatted, and the other is the unformatted. So here is formatted already, and then you're going to see here is also the unformatted, and we'll get to this in a little bit. You can see no styles, no formatting on this at all. And if I come back to this one, you can see we have lots of formatting. We also have table of content. So we're going to kind of deconstruct this a little bit because I want you to see kind of what it looks like from somebody who might be inheriting a document that has styles built into it. Okay, but also how we can make our own subtle changes to this. First thing I want you to know is that I'm going to just go right over to here to like a brief history of AI. When I click on that, I'm going to have in my home tab, you're going to see here, my home tab, I have this grouping here called styles. And then yours might be a little bit more splayed out, like a little bit longer than this, depending on your screen resolution. But when I open this up, you're going to see how I have all these styles built in. These were all my saved, my preset saved formats live. And you can see that this is a heading 1, right? That's pretty great. How about this one right here? This is a title, right? Very, very easy. Let's go over to here to how about this smaller one. This is a heading 2, okay? So all of these are preset styles, okay? So it's very, very easy for me to, let's just say, for example, let me just go ahead and create another one. Okay, I'll just call this limitations. So let's just say I want to make this like a heading 1, for example. Very easy to apply it. I go over here to styles and then boom, it's now heading 1, right? And see it's absorbed the Aptos display heading 20 and this light blue color. How about if I want to make that heading 2? You can see how now that's heading 2. Now, some of you may have also noticed already that on the left-hand side, I have something called the navigation pane. And as I added something on here, automatically it added it on here. So if you don't have the navigation pane open right now, let me show you where you can find it. So in the View tab, you're going to see that there are a few checkboxes. We're going to go to the navigation pane right there. You see that? How you can turn that on. Now, what that allows us to do is to navigate through what we call heading. Each of these are headings, and they're all pre-built into Microsoft Word. I didn't really do too much to this document. This already came with all those styles. This automatically was added on. So let's just see the benefit of it. Let's say, for example, I wanted to go down to, let's just say, a brief history of AI. Notice I click on that, and it allows me to navigate through it. So we're seeing not only the benefit of the formatting, but also the ability to go from one section to the other very, very quickly and easily. See that? So if you have like a 50-page document, you can see how nice and beneficial that is. So let me go ahead. I'm going to go back up to here, and I'm going to remove this one. Notice now it removes it from there just the same. So really, really special, really good stuff here. Now, the other thing, high level, is that I was also able to create this table of contents, which we're going to talk about in the end after I finish doing all of my formatting and application of styles in the other document. So broad stroke overview at this point, right? So inside of the Home tab, you have a styles group, and we have all of these styles. The only one that I've been working with so far is the heading 1 and heading 2. And believe it or not, something called normal. Normal is just a weird word for basically saying that's my kind of main content, right? Like all of my kind of like main paragraph stuff right there, right, is normal, right? So it's basically just everything that's not any of these fancy ones, like a heading and all this other stuff. there are quite a bit of free styles to start with, right? They've already given me all of these things I never asked for that are pretty cool, right? So let's just say, for example, I wanted to make this like one of these intense quotes, right? You can see how nice and fast that was, right? Again, I did not create any of this stuff. This was already built in to Microsoft Word. For every single new document that you create, it comes with all of these, right? I'll go ahead and undo that. Let's go and review a little bit more about what we have here. And just notice as I hover over it, you can see it's going to kind of give me the name of it. Also, it's going to also give me a little preview of what it might look like as I do that. Now, if you ever want to get even deeper than this, you'll see that I also have this little guy in the lower right. You see that little kind of dimple looking guy right there? When I click on that, that's going to actually show me a whole bunch of other things that I may not have seen otherwise. So it's worth, if you want to go a little bit more advanced, you can see we can always go to that little dimple right there, and that's going to pop up for us. So again, broad stroke overview, right? So you kind of know where everything is, why we do it on some levels, okay? And then also not only for navigation, but also for table of content. And we're going to start building some of this stuff out in general. Now, let's now go into the kind of overall kind of theme part of all of these, okay? Because if we take a look at what I started with here with a brand new document, right? This is the Aptos display, right? And then this is Aptos body, right? You can see this is also Aptos. Well, I've already got all my headings set up here, right? And that's beautiful. But you know what? I would like to make, without having to do too much at all, global changes, kind of sweeping changes along the whole thing. So how do we do that? We're going to go over here to the Design tab. Okay, so we're going to leave the Home tab and we're going to go to Design. And there's a whole bunch of stuff all built in here. Okay, now you're going to see how there's themes. There's all of these little kind of preset guys right there. Okay, there's also colors, there's fonts, etc. Now, these are related to our styles, but in a much more sort of like connect the dots kind of way, right? Like I don't have to do as much as what I'm going to show you in a little bit when we kind of do things more manually. This is going to be highly, highly automatic. So let's go through what is going to happen when I change my theme and when I change all these guys as well. So, and just watch as I just kind of hover over these, right? I'm going to go to themes and just notice how on a grand level, everything is changing. See that? So what's happening is that if I choose, let's say, for example, the Ion theme, it's deciding that the title style is going to look a certain way. The heading 1 style is going to look a certain way, the heading 2, and also the normal style. Might take a look at a completely different one, right? You can see that. You can see that. Now, it's not only changing the color, obviously, it's changing the font, it's changing the size, etc. Right? So you can see very easily, I can just quickly override it completely. And you see this one, I'm going to say Damask. I choose that one. And then when I go back to my home, notice how my font is now Bookman Old Style, right? I click on this one, Bookman Old Style 28. This one's Bookman Old Style 20, and it's also green, right? Global change. But here's the thing. There's still the title style. There's still the heading 1 style. There's still the heading 2 style. Well, let's go ahead and verify that. I'm going to go over here to my brief history of AI. I'm going to choose styles, and then notice everything looks completely different because I overrode it with that theme. But they've still maintained the type of style. You see that? It's still a heading 1, right? That's great. But in this case, it happens to be green and then Bookman Old Style. Okay, that's nice. Great. So it just made a whole overarching look and feel to it, right? So really, really slick. Let's do that again. Look over here to design. Let's go back to themes and let's just try a completely different one, right? Let's just choose this one here with Vapor Trail, right? You can see they all have these kind of interesting names. Okay, I do that and you'll see here completely different now, right? This is Century Gothic for my headings, 20, etc. And then you'll also notice the color and all that good stuff. I go over here to my styles and you can see everything's automatically overridden. So huge time saver. I didn't even touch any of the font. I hope you understand that, right? It made a global sweeping change on everything. So again, very automatic, and that's kind of the point for us here. But now let's go over to here to a next level around document formatting. You see this here? And I'm going to go to kind of maybe a really kind of striking, obvious one, right? I'm going to go over here to this one. It's kind of right in the middle, right there. And I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of hover over it. And then notice how that is not changing the font per se, right? It's keeping my Century Gothic, but it's overriding what these styles actually look like, right? If that makes sense, right? So the style now of title is now centered and it's got these lines up on top. Okay, that's pretty neat. Okay, cool. And this one, right? Same Century Gothic, same red, everything, but it's saying, hey, listen, maybe you want your style to look a little bit more interesting. You can do that. Let's make that centered, make this red, etc. So let's just go ahead and hunt around on some of these, right? I'm just going to go ahead and just, so we can see the whole thing. I'll just hover, hover. So many choices to be as creative and professional. See this? Really neat, right? A few kind of hiding underneath here as well. Look at that one. Okay, well, that's a pretty neat one. See, all built in right there. Okay, now I'll go ahead and choose this one right now so we can see kind of, again, a striking difference there, right? And how much work did I have to do to get here? Barely anything at all. And now I have a very, very professional document. I did not even need to know, how do you do these boxes, right? What does this mean? How do I get to color, right? Again, because I was doing a combination of my themes and now applying this particular style, right? This sort of sub-style for all of these, it now applied it, okay? Now let's go a little bit deeper, where we're going to go over here to colors. Okay, because we're now kind of getting more sort of nuanced, more granular with what we can do within this particular theme, but on a global level, right? That's the understanding there. So let's go over here to colors. And again, the best way to really understand what they do is to kind of hover, right? You see this? So it's maintained everything I've done so far, including the theme with the fonts, okay? And then the subdivision of that with my different variations on those particular styles. And now I'm getting kind of a global change on all the colors there, right? So I'll just do something greenish, right? You can see there's green, and now you can see how that's made, again, a global change for me without having to really do anything at all. But it keeps it consistent. That's the thing we want to understand here about styles. And I mentioned that in my introduction about those two things, right? Consistency and efficiency. You've already seen efficiency, right? Because it was so easy and so fast for me to make these changes. But notice that I didn't highlight every individual thing to be able to do that, right? Because I wanted to have consistency all throughout the whole document. I make the change on the outside, right? Earlier I talked about, it's like we're making a change in the factory, and then automatically everything that's connected to the factory then absorbs those changes. If you are doing too many manual changes, if you feel like you're out going in here and doing all that stuff, you're not using styles. And in fact, you're not using Word in the way that Word wants you to be using it, right? That's why it takes up so much real estate here and also inside of Home, because they want you to be consistent and efficient with your application and your formatting, because we want to be professional and we also want to be productive, right? That's really the important part. Okay, so great. And you can see also, if you ever wanted to, way down in the bottom, you have the ability to also customize your colors. So if you're working for a particular company and they have like their, RGB value or their hexadecimal value, for your particular company style guide, you can always customize them all right here, right? And then you can also ultimately save this as a template if you want to. Really cool. So let's now jump over here to fonts, okay? And now you're going to see that just like with colors, I have a whole bunch of preset fonts. So far, because of this theme that I'm so grateful for, it gave me the Century Gothic, right? Okay, that's pretty neat. But you know what? That's not what I want to use anymore. I changed my mind. So remember, global changes. So when I hover, notice how it's changing everything, everything, everything across the board here. Let's go to something a little bit more kind of different there. You can see with my serif fonts, right? You can see that versus sans serif, right? That doesn't have the little kind of feet. You can see that. Now, for many of these, you're going to see two, right? Let me just zoom in here. You see how there's one right there, okay? And there's also one right there. You see that? Well, what does that mean? Well, we have our headings, and then we have the body, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about those two different ones, right? Like if I go over to here to, Arial, which is the top, and then Times New Roman, which is the second one. Times New Roman is the body, is the normal font, whereas the Arial is going to be our headings. Okay, so it's very easy to now to apply both of those. And again, global sweeping changes, very little effort to do something pretty powerful, to do pretty quickly. Let's come back again and then explore some of the ones that they've given us, and very easy to change all of it, right? Again, global change here. So let's now say I have my own company font I work with, and I don't really want any of these. Well, guess what? Here is my customized font option. I choose that, and you can see it's pretty straightforward. What is going to be my heading font and what is going to be my body font? Okay, exactly what I said. So you can see here, I can very easily now change that to something completely different, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and just do that for my heading. Beautiful. And then my body font, I'll just do again something totally different here, right? I'm just going to go and do Tahoma. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. I'll call this Bon Tahoma, right? So I'm now creating my own now custom theme font. Very important to understand what we're doing here, because many times you are going to want to have control over your kind of use and application of this content to be able to then come in and then make it so you're going to have this easily accessible to you every time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and say save. Okay, and now guess what? When I come back to the font, you're going to see that there is a custom section right there, and that's what I just created right there. Okay, and that's going to be available for me in future documents too. That's what's so cool about this. Now you can go even deeper into your settings with paragraph spacing, right? Notice how that's changing everything kind of on a global level. You see that? Not just for colors, not just for fonts. And you also have the ability to set as your default, right? So if I zoom in a little bit here, let's kind of read this. Use this look for all new documents. Save your current settings so that every time you create a blank document, it'll be formatted just the way you like it. This is perfect if you have a favorite font or always want specific paragraph spacing, okay? So if you are in charge of documents for your company, they're always wanting to do a particular look and feel, particular format, make it the default. So you never have to do this ever again. Really, it's so cool, so magical. And honestly, in my over 20 years of doing this, most people completely ignore styles when they should not be. Styles are everywhere. Styles in all graphic design, styles are in web design, you see, and styles can be just for the basic desktop publishing that we should be using it, and let's do it properly, right? Meaning we want to do it globally. We want to use our efficiency and our consistency, and we're not touching the individual aspects of our document. We're staying over here either in the design tab, right? We're looking at all these things here, or looking at our home section under styles. Now, what we've been discussing so far is just the kind of like more automatic ways of doing things, okay? And these are really great, and I do appreciate them, right? And I'm not discounting at all, just based on what I'm going to show you next. But it's really powerful to know that we have these like preset designs. We also have these preset themes, and we also have our colors and fonts we can choose from, and also save as a default.
Hi, from everyone at Simon Says It. We hope you're enjoying this training lesson. Please like this video to show your support for the channel. If you want to take your learning further, earn a certificate for this course, and gain access to over 200 courses ad-free, click up there and go to simonsaysit.com. Thanks for watching, and back to the course.
So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at an unformatted document and just basically start from scratch, okay? Because I'm going to show you a little bit more kind of ground level customization that we can do, all right? So I'm going to go over to here to my unformatted, and we're going to see that, yes, I have my navigation pane open. So if you don't have it already, recall, we go to View, and we're going to see here we have my navigation pane. Now at this point, I don't have anything showing over here under my headings, and that's all going to change in a little bit. And also note, I do like to have my ruler open because I'm going to show you some kind of advanced formatting that we can do with certain things with our bullets. So just know that that's there. So again, ruler, and again, navigation pane, all right here. So we're going to kind of do this from the ground up. Some of you may want to do it as automatically as I showed you earlier. Some of you may want to do things really from the ground up and do it from scratch. Okay, so just watch me as I do this because I want you to see how easy it is and really think about the process of what we do so you don't add on extra steps for yourself. So this is the same exact content as we saw before, but completely unformatted. So what I'm going to do is just simply click anywhere in the paragraph. And that's what's so neat about this is I don't have to highlight everything. Do not highlight everything if it's just going to be a paragraph style. Okay, so we go here to styles, and I know this is going to be a title. So watch, I just hit title, and that's done. All right, I'll just do that one more time. I just simply click inside there, right? Not doing anything. I'm not highlighting. I'm just clicking inside that paragraph. I go there, I hit title, done. That's great. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and now say a brief history of AI. That is going to be heading 1. And then keep your eye over here on the left-hand side. Notice what just popped up. Key milestones in AI history. That sounds like a heading 2. Okay, very easily applied. That's neat. Uses of AI. Okay, that's going to be a heading 1. Okay, and I'm just going to go through these relatively quickly here. And then notice the hierarchy, right? This is going to be kind of the parent. Here is his kind of child. Key milestones, right? Because it's a history. And then uses, it starts over again, right? So that's going to be heading 1. Common AI applications, what's that going to be? Probably a heading 2, right? Because it's a subset of uses. And you can see here, industry specific. And then I'll give you a nice little shortcut. If you want to repeat the last thing you did, you can always do Control plus the Y key. That repeats the last thing you did. So as an example, right, I'll just go ahead and do benefits of AI, right? I'm going to say heading 1. And then advantages, that's going to be a heading 2. Now, if I want to make this the same thing heading 2, I'm going to do Control Y because it just repeated the last thing I did. Beautiful. I love that. All right, so I'll just keep going here. So limitations, that's going to be heading 1. Hopefully you're all paying attention to the beauty of what's going on over here on the left-hand side. This is going to be a heading 2. And then we'll have threats and ethical concerns. That's a heading 1. All right, this is going to be a heading 2. And there are keyboard shortcuts we can apply to all of these in case you're curious about those. Specific AI threats, that's also going to be a heading 2. Okay, and then finally conclusion, that is a heading 1. Beautiful, right? So you can see the hierarchy aspect of it. It's already starting to come into play and it's looking very nice. And you'll see again, I can easily navigate all throughout my document, right? Going back up to here, even going back up to my title by clicking on this little top part here. Beautiful. Love that. Now, let's do a few other things here. Let's just do some bullets. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight all these. And I'm going to do regular bullets for right now, but I know that I'm going to make these into a particular kind of style in a little bit. So I can make that into a bullet. But as you probably know, I can also add on like a check mark or any of these other ones here that I might want to explore. And I'll just go ahead and, I don't know, I'll just make it into a check mark for right now. Now, if I were to go to here, for example, right, and make this into bullets, okay, notice how it remembers it. But I want to make this very kind of like specific later on with my styling. So just put a pin in that for a little bit because I know that I want these to maybe be indented a little bit more or whatever it is to make this kind of be very special about it. So here we are. Now, I have very, very particular needs and a very particular vision for my heading 1 and heading 2, and even for my normal. So what we're going to do now is we're going to now modify the styles on this level right here. So earlier we were talking about the design, which is kind of like, on this kind of global sort of connect the dots. But we're going to actually go kind of more manual, kind of more sort of intimate level around what we're working with here. So what am I going to do here? Well, I would like to modify that. I say, hey, listen, I don't want my heading 1s to be Aptos display 20 anymore. I changed my mind and I want to make it a global change across the board. Now, again, earlier I showed you in a much more kind of like connect the dots automated way. I want to be very specific about it. So how do I do that? Very easily. I right click on the actual style name and you get to see here is the option to modify. Beautiful, right? So I'm going to go ahead Say modify, and then notice the name you can see here is heading 1, right? I'm not going to change that. I love that, but if you ever wanted to, you can always do that. The style type is paragraph and character. There's different style types you can do depending on what you're applying it to. But the more important part is going to be down here, and then also potentially down below if you wanted to go even further with these. Now, I might want to change mine to be something completely different, right? So we'll go ahead and just choose this one for now, abolition. And you can see how that's giving me a preview of it. I can also change it so it's going to be slightly bigger. And then, of course, I can bold it, italicize it, do all this other good stuff here. I can change the color of it. Let's maybe make this kind of a dark purple here so I can really make that stand out. Very good. And guess what? Some other things here in terms of alignment. So now I'm able to get really, really granular with my changes here. So you can see a few things I could do there. Right, but I'm going to keep it left aligned, but if I wanted to, I can make those changes. And a little bit, we'll come down even further to see under formatting. But for right now, I'm pretty happy with this. So everything that is connected to heading 1 will then change. So now I go ahead and click OK. And now you can see how that's changed. And now look at that. Every single one of these that has heading 1 applied to it is now changed. See that? Global change. And I made it on the level of the heading style itself. And again, what did I do? I just went up to here, I right-clicked on it, and I said modify. That's pretty cool, right? But now let me talk about maybe a possibly different way for those of us who are more comfortable looking at it from what I like to call the front end of things. So let's just say, for example, like I want to make this have like an underline like that. See that? That's kind of neat, right? Doing this kind of bottom border around this whole thing. Reaching for the stars here, but let's just see how well this cooperates. And then what I'm going to do now, instead of doing everything on the back end, I did it on the front end, right? And let's even change the color to something different, something I'm already used to, and go ahead and do different color, maybe an orange color, just like that. Now, what am I going to do next? Well, I want all of these guys to follow suit. This is going to accomplish the same thing as we did before, but in a slightly different way. If we go over here to styles, notice how heading 1 is still that Merlot color. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to right click on it, and then notice my first choice here is update heading 1, which means the style, to match the selection. So basically it's going to absorb what I've already done on the front end and then apply it to the back end. So I've done all the work here, and now you can see how I was just as easily able to do everything I wanted to do before. Isn't that so cool? So you can do it in one of two ways. It's really up to you. Front end first or back end, either way. Many people choose to do it this way, the second way, because we're already comfortable with all this stuff here, right? It's like if I were to ask you to put it in a little border underline, inside that back end part, you'd be like, I don't know how to do that. That's really hard, and it's really far, and it's really dizzying, and it's just, I don't even know where to go. So don't worry about it, because you know how to do everything here, which is really nice. So I'll go ahead and do the same thing now. All right, notice what I am highlighting all of this, because I'm going to change all the fonts on some levels here, right? And I'll just go ahead and choose a slightly different one here. How about this one? All right, and I will bold that. Okay, but I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Do that. Pretty cool. And now I'll go ahead and make this a different color. I'll make it kind of like a lightish gray there. Very nice. And then notice how none of these have changed yet. So what I did was I modified the text, but I have not updated the style yet. So where do I go? I go back over here to styles, and then what do? I right click and I say update heading to match the selection. And look at that, global change across the board. Okay, and that's the kind of thing we want to see here, right? And you can see efficiency and consistency and 100% customizable by me for me. Really, absolutely love this. So you can see how fancy that is, how nice and easy it is. Everything else remains the same here, but then I have a global sweeping change on my whole document without very little effort, right? And again, I have consistency and efficiency. Now let's go ahead and let's go beyond working with our headings, and let's talk about the quote unquote normal. Okay, so remember what normal is. Normal is just like everything that's kind of a paragraph, basic paragraphs, right? not anything having to do with like my headings, my subheadings, and possibly even my bullets. So what we're going to do, we're going to do bullets afterwards. But for right now, we're focusing on everything does not have its own style of a title, a heading 1, and a heading 2. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to go over to here to normal. So that's my first choice. I'm going to right click on it and I'm just going to say modify. I choose that, and now this is going to give me the ability to really kind of just go a lot more custom on this, right? So you can see here is all my different choices here for my different fonts. Okay, so currently I'm in Aptos. Okay, so I'll just choose maybe Calibri, slightly different one. Probably take me a little while to get there. Just for fun, let's just do Berlin. Okay, great. Make that a little bit easier. Okay, and I'll make that maybe a little bit smaller. Okay, great. If we want to kind of take a peek at some of the other choices we have here, like here's our spacing, right? You can see we have all these other choices here. And then also down on the way bottom, we have format. And then take a look at all of the different styling options we have here. Like for example, I go to paragraph. Notice I have the ability to adjust all my spacing options right here, as well as my spacing before and after each paragraph, all within here, right? So again, how did I get here? I went over to here to format. Now, if you go to format, there's a ton of options here. Here's the border one that I was told you was going to be so hiding, right? There's numbering, shortcut keys for each of these. You can customize your shortcut keys, you name it, right? We got everything all right here. Okay, so I'm still in the normal tab. Pretty easy to do, right? It's already there. I didn't change that. And then you'll notice I changed the font, Berlin, made it 11. It's double spaced. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now notice across the board, it's changed everything. See that? Everything except for what? Everything except for my heading 1, heading 2, and my title. So let's just try that again. Let's go and say, oh, you know what? I changed my mind. I didn't want that to be double space. So I'm now going to do it on the front end. So let's go ahead and go over to here to our paragraph group. You can see I'm going to find my spacing right there. I'm going to make that maybe 1.5. And again, notice only this changed. Why? Well, because this is just sort of like the deviant initially, but he's really going to be the leader. When I go back over here, styles, right click on it, and as easily as I did before, update normal to match the selection. And now everybody now matches it. Isn't that cool? So really, really happy with that. Global changes quickly, easily, and again, consistently. All right, now let's go ahead and do special ones just for our bullets. So I'm going to go ahead and just make these a special style for me to work with here. So let's go ahead and I'll just do like these guys right there. Okay, and I'm eventually going to make this into a bullet of some kind. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger also. So let's go ahead and make that tiny bit bigger. And you know what? I'm also going to make this, whenever I have bullets, I'm going to make them look a little bit different. I want them to kind of stand out. So I'm kind of overriding everything. So let's just start off with that for right now. So in this case, I'm going to be doing a brand new style. This style does not exist. How does that differ from what we did before? We already had a heading style, didn't we? We already had a normal style. Now we're going to do one that is completely made up from scratch by me right here. That's never been seen before. So what I do this time is I'm going to say create a style. I'm creating a style based off of what's already there. Okay, because before, remember, it already existed. Heading 1, heading 2. Now I'm going to say create a style. And now it says style 1, and I'll just call this Dave C. Bullets. Totally customized. You can see I get a preview of it. I click OK. That's awesome. But now I want to apply that same thing to the rest of these. So I go back to styles, and guess what's waiting for me up on top? Is Dave C. Bullets. Isn't that nice? Look at that. I'll do my Control Y, and amazing. See that? Totally customized by me. Many of you are going to be faced with that decision or opportunity to have to actually create your own style, not just ones that they've started you off with, but one for your company that's very specific, right, to whatever your needs are, right? Like law firms are using these things all the time. Go in and do the same thing. Go over to here. There's my Dave C. Beautiful. Love that. Control Y. That's awesome. All right. And you can see how nice and fast that is. And I think we're pretty much good to go for right now. Maybe a few more here. All right, now it's looking pretty good. But now let's go ahead and face with another kind of situation here. Well, you know what? I want to change my bullets a little bit. I decided I don't want to do that anymore, right? Or I wanted to kind of make my indenting a little bit kind of differently. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to work with my ruler up here to be able to accomplish that. That's just my personal way of doing it. So if you take a look, I will have these three little icons here, this guy, and that guy. They all have their own sort of role when we're talking about bullets. So let's go ahead and I'm going to highlight all 5 of these bullets. And let's just quickly see what each of these does. Okay, so if I were to just kind of grab the bottom one here, you'll notice how everything moves, right? And that might be exactly what you want. Like, hey, you know what? I want all my bullets to be more indented. Notice I'm just selecting the bottom little rectangle there. If I go to the icon right above that, that just moves the text and leaves the bullets alone. You see that? I can kind of make them come in like this. And then you could probably guess what this one does. It just moves the bullets and not the text. So you've got lots and lots of options here for creative control, however you want. Okay, so I'm going to move this over a tiny bit. So I'm just going to grab this guy. All right, and then actually, you know what? I'll move this one over there. And I really like that, right? That's the style that we're working with. Actually, let's move this over back a tiny, tiny bit more. I'm going to be very particular about this whole thing. Now, let's go ahead and say, hey, listen, you know what? I want the rest of these guys to do the same thing. So it's the style that I've created. So that's super easy to do, right? So this is what I want. So I can go and highlight everything or even just highlight one bullet. And then guess what? Same exact thing. Update Dave C. And now look at that. They all now follow suit. Oh my God. Imagine having to do this another 10 times. No, we work with the mold. We work with the mold even when we're creating something from scratch. We still have that mold that we can operate from. So look how slick this is looking coming across here. So I'm super, super happy with that. Now let's do our table of contents. Now that I've got this all set up and it's looking beautiful, I need to have my users, my audience, to be able to navigate throughout this whole thing. And table of contents are a really powerful way to do that. Table of contents are typically, if you don't really know what you're doing, it sounds like a very bewildering task. But because we were working with styles, and in particular, heading 1 and heading 2 styles, and possibly even heading 3, if you're kind of working with that level, table of contents just creates itself. It's really so amazing. So I'm going to now create a new page before this to make it so I have my table of contents space here. So I'm going to do a page break. So a couple of ways you can do a page break. With the mouse, you can say insert, and then there's page break right there. And also notice you can do control plus return. That's the way I like to do it. And now I just have this little space right up there. And now what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to now bring in a table of contents. So I'm going to go over way over to the top here to the middle where we have this references tab. Okay. And then on the far left-hand side, I have this table of contents. Awesome. So I choose that, and you're going to see here how I have these built-in table of contents options right there. And if you look close enough, you're going to see how we have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, 1, 2, 3. Wow, all that, right? Because all the work we just did was not just for formatting, but also for table of contents generation. So now I'm going to go ahead and choose this one. And you can see just like that, without me having to do hardly anything at all, because I've done most of the work already, it's already created this. See this? Amazing. It knows what page they're all on because it's linking directly to these heading 1s and heading 2s. So, so cool. So let's just go over here to, let's say, for example, key milestone in AI history. And let's just say I'm going to do a new heading 1 right here. So let's do one called, the future of AI. And I'm going to make this, guess what? A heading 2. That's going to be a heading 2. And now let's maybe bring this up a tiny bit. Let's just see if we have a little more space for us to play with. I'm trying to make this other's going to be on the same page, but let's just see here. So that's fine. So this is going to be here. And now this is going to be added on, right, for another section here. So another section for future. Okay, so that's awesome. Now, if I go back up to my table of contents now, notice it's not here yet, but it will be. But notice that I added it on here, doesn't show up here. So what we have to do is we have to refresh or update the table of contents. I choose that, and it's going to ask me, Word is updating the table of contents. Select one of the following options. Just update the page numbers or the entire table. I want to do the entire table, not just the page number, because I just added on content. I click OK, and now notice Future of AI is there, and it's on page 2. And if I were to move any of these things around, like move it to a different page number, all that stuff, I could very easily do that and then update it here within my table of contents. But it finds it so beautifully all right here without really me having to hardly do very much except for updating the table. So you see how much benefit there is. Now, if you wanted to go even deeper than this, by the way, in terms of your table of contents, you can see under table of contents, there's more options you can go further into. That's a little bit beyond the scope of class, but I do want to show you here that you can go to custom table of contents and you can go even deeper with all these things. You can see kind of like what it's creating and why, right? You can see here's my table of contents section, heading 1, heading 2, etc. Do you not want to show page numbers? You can turn that off, right? You want to write align page numbers? You can do that. And they even have like different built-in templates with table of contents, right? If I choose like classic, for example, notice how that's just changed. Go from classic to distinctive. That's got a line going there, right? Whatever it is. Now it is going to override anything that you may have because this one is using the template that we've now created. But if you were to choose some of these other ones, it's going to override it with their own kind of presets. And then going even deeper than this, you can go to options and modify. And certainly, you can go to a lot of different levels accordingly. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then I'm going to just say cancel here. Now, I'm going to show you one last quick thing in terms of our navigation that you may not expect is also built in to styles. And that's the ability to link from, like, let's say one part of our document to the other. So let me just show you, just say, for example, this word threats. I want to be able to, when somebody clicks on that, it takes us to a specific part of the document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a link. So watch this. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to choose link. And many of us, as we know the word link, it's going to take us to like a web page or something like that. And you can put in the web page address you want to do that. You can certainly move it to a whole other folder, whatever you want to do. But in Word, they call it a place in this document that's now going to allow me to navigate within the document that already has kind of a natural sort of resting place because of our headings and subheadings. I did not set this up with this intention. It was already naturally there. So now, because it's a heading, I can now say, hey, listen, when somebody clicks on it, it's going to take them to the threats and ethical concerns. Why is this here? Because it's a heading. Automatically happens. I barely had to do anything, right? Another benefit of working with a style. And in this case, it's a heading style. So I click OK, and now look at that. That's going to be there. I'm going to hold down the control key, and then boom, that takes me right up there to the top. Isn't that so slick? So there's so many benefits. You get so much reward for working with styles, working with headings, and so much more in terms of formatting, in terms of navigation, in terms of table of contents, hierarchy, consistency, and of course, efficiency.
Well, congratulations everyone for completing this course. So hope you enjoyed this class, hope you learned a lot, and we look forward to seeing you in future lessons. Thanks everyone.
Are you happy with this training? Make sure to subscribe for more great content. Visit the Simon Says It channel, explore our videos and training sessions, and decide what you want to learn next.